Welcome back to another Team ContiBreak video. We have a deck showcase for Bruce, or also known as the Final Rush deck. So in this video we'll be talking about an overview of the whole deck build itself, some deck building options, and its matchups against the existing decks of overdress. We'll be doing the deck build first, the deck build itself, so the 46 main deck and the 4-ride deck first. Starting off the deck build is your ride deck. So of course your starter will be Innocent Matt, your grade 1 will be Bad Steve, your grade 2 will be Angry Richard, and your last one from the ride deck will be your avatar, Violence Bruce. There will be and this will be your main ride deck. Next up will be the grade 3s. So we have Theory of Violence Bruce. You need a set, including the one over here, since a Persona ride will boost a big part of your turns. Next will be a set of the Fist Colossus. This will be one of your main rear guards during your final rush, as it's a 23k base and it soul charges, so it gives it helps with the cost of Valence Bruce with a Soul Blast 5. Next with your grade 3s is 2 copies of Marjorie. This will be your draw mechanic for the deck. The good thing about this is using its skill when it attacks, or the first time it attacks during a turn, because it will give itself +10 until the end of the turn. So that's a good power boost to itself. That will be your grade 3 lineup. Moving on to our grade 2s, we'll be running 2 of Angry Richards. This is just to fill up slots for the deck. This is in my opinion, the most flexible part of your deck, so you can run other grade 2s, grade 1s, or grade 3s and replace him. Next will be one of your more important rear guards, which will be Eden. So the rear guard that applies pressure, it speeds up the game because of its innate crit when it withstands, and it's on its skill can provide your deck with a bit of more control, or field control. Next is another grade 2, which will be flexible in the deck. You can either opt for this or other cards in the Dark States pool. So Electro Spartan, the main purpose of him being in the deck is just to soul charge for Bruce's Soul Blast 5. That will be your grade 2 lineup. Now moving on to your grade 1s. We have a set of the Perfect Guard, Recusal Hate Dragon. So this is your Perfect Guard with the ability of not discarding if you have 2 or less, or 1 or less hand cards when it enters the Guardian Zone. Next will be 3 of Protobulb Dragon. So this is your hand fix when you're in Final Rush. Since you have random soul charges, you may either soul charge triggers, your over trigger, or Bruce inside your soul. This will allow you to get them back into hand. So this is a very good card for this deck. Next will be Acrobat Presenter, another card for soul charging. So watch out for overusing this guy's skill, but you can't really opt out of using its skill, since it will soul charge most of your deck if you're not careful with using him. Next will be Gong Ram. This is another card to help with drawing. Its second skill, especially, it's Soul Blast 3 to draw a card. So since you can gauge out the cost for a Bruce's Soul Blast 5, if you have more than enough soul, you can just draw so that you can survive the turns of your opponent. So that's it for our normal units and our grade 1s. So moving on to our trigger lineup, we'll be going for the Dark States over trigger. Since if you drive check it early, especially in your grade 1 turn or grade 2 turn for the rest of the game, your Vanguard will be at 10k or will get plus 10k and an additional critical. It's a good over trigger right there. Going through the next of your trigger lineup will be 4 crits. 4 of the start deck crits. An additional 2 crits just to apply more pressure for your games. We have 4 draws, Diabolos Jake, and another draw. So you'll basically be running 6 crits, 5 draws, and of course 4 heals. Plus your over trigger, which is technically a draw trigger with additional stuff. This will be your, this is what I would like my deck to look like, though in case of matchups and stuff, I can just change number of quantity of cards, and these 4 cards are especially the most flexible to change inside the deck. Okay, so now we'll be going through your deck building options. So for your grade 3s, you can mix and match your values for your grade 3s. So you can either go with 3 Colossus then 3 Marjorie, or you can even go with a set of Marjorie and 2 of Colossus, or you can have a set of both by moving one of your grade 2 slots to your grade 3. So depending on how your matches go and how you feel confident about guarding or surviving your opponent's turns, you can just move one of your grade 2 slots to your grade 3s. So that is one option you can have. The next will be to keep in mind your soul charging options. So for this deck, I went with 3 of Gong Rams and 3 of Acrobat Presenters. You can just move them around so that you won't really have to soul charge every time they are on the field. So if you have difficulty surviving your opponent's turns, you can always opt to go for Brody as your grade 2. This guy, so he's a 10k intercept, so it'll, even if you're not gonna be using him to intercept, your opponent might use one attack to just attack Brody himself. So that's one less attack going to your Vanguard. Your other option for guarding will be Tartarus Beat Scram. Especially if you have a full, or if you have 5 soul. So choose one of your units and it gets plus 15, so this is a 15k guard. It's a blitz order, so you can only use it during your guard phase on your opponent's turn. So if you want to use this, you can either opt in with 2 Brodies. Your Tartarus can be replacing Electro Spartan if you have way too many soul. So if you want to turn your deck into a more defensive or to have more defensive options, you can opt to go for this. Or you can just choose one of any of these cards. And now, lastly will be your for fun techs or cards that you can include in your deck to make your deck more fun. So one option that you have will be Simone. So Simone will make your lanes be 2 cards to guard. So again, this will be what I recommend to be replaced with Simone, or you can just adjust your grade 1 ratios. So there, Simone is one of them, and the last card that I recommend will be Crawl, You Insects, which is an order card that's grade 3 since Bruce has 5 soul. So by the time you use this, you can just pump up one of your lanes and it'll last for the end of turn. So if that rearguarder stands, it'll be getting all the bonuses. So I have yet to play with this order itself in this Final Rush deck, so you can turn your deck into more of a soul charge based deck, then just use this to pump up Mr. Eden so that he gets power along with the crit when it restands. So those are what I recommend to be your deck building options aside from what you see on screen now. Moving on to our deck overview, which is mostly going to be your pros and your cons for this deck. So one of the advantages that you can have with this deck is that Final Rush doesn't need anything besides starting from a grade 3 turn, which is given by Bruce. So his first skill. So you don't really need anything besides him being the Vanguard. And one of the advantages for your deck is that you already have enough resources for Bruce's Soul Blast 5 by the time your Final Rush is active. The next good thing about this deck is it doesn't necessarily need a lot of counterblasts to pull off your combos. The main people that will use your counterblasts will be Colossus, Eden, Protobulb Dragon. So these three are the only ones that will use your counterblast, so if ever you're against prison, counterblasting is not really a problem. And since counterblasts aren't really necessary for your deck, you can just early guard those decks that you have a problem with, like Bastion and other decks that just try to kill you on their first grade 3 turns. Another good thing about this deck is when Final Rush is active, most of your cards give you advantage, like Marjorie had advantage, like Marjorie and Protobulb. So they can hand fix, this guy can hand fix, this guy can draw you more cards. And your last overall advantage will be your deck is very straightforward. So you don't really need to think about a lot of things, which gives you more space for thinking about or remembering your opponent's drive checks and strategizing more about the overall flow of the game. So now that we're done with your advantages, now we go for your cons. The main bad thing about your deck is that your first grade 3 turn will not be really that impactful. In my opinion, it's the least impactful first grade 3 ride out of all the overdress decks, since you have to wait for your second grade 3 turn for your Final Rush to be active. So that's gonna be a main thing about your deck, especially when going second. You're gonna have a bit more disadvantage, which is gonna be your second con for the deck. Your third one will be your stronger rear guards are always going to be the grade 3s. So if you put more grade 3s inside your deck, you're going to have less cards to guard with. Another disadvantage for your deck will be the random soul charges. So it could risk you losing triggers, which is going to be your main thing to guard with in overdress especially. Your remedy for that will be Protobulb, but you're gonna have to wait for Final Rush for it again. And most last disadvantage that you have is that your rear guards are a must for soul charging. So you have Gong Ram, which is a must, Acrobat Presenter, which is a must, Colossus, which is a must, and to use Marjorie's skill, the soul charge is also a must. So as much as it will help with the cost of Bruce, but if you have way too many soul charging isn't really a good thing by that point. So it will just be an option, or it will just be a condition for you to deck out, which is sad. And now for a quick rundown of your deck matchups. So we'll be going from Dragon Empire to Brand States, Brand Gate. So for Dragon Empire, facing against Nirvana or the overdress deck, you'll just be watching out for the retire mechanic. And yeah, as for the Eugene deck, it's Eugene, so I don't think you'd have a problem with that much. Next, moving on to Keter Sanctuary. For Bastion, going second might already lose you the game since your final rush will be delayed and that deck is very, very quick. If you manage to survive their turns though, most of their hand will be grade 3 and that might let you win the game. For the Sorcerer's one, your RGs, your rear guards might get removed by their grade 1 when they draft check a trigger, so that's sort of a retard to watch out again for. Moving on to Dark States for mirror matchups, so first to go, grade 3, first to proc their final rush will most likely win. Facing against Barrow Magnus, he has a field wipe, so that's one thing. And if you're gonna attempt to rush him in the early game, he might just use those Counter Blasts to soul charge more and get that 15 soul on his first grade 3 ride. As for Stoicheia, for Magnolia, multi-attack is a pain. It'll make you have to use your other grade 2 or grade 1 rear guards just to guard its multi-attacks, so that's less rear guards for you. And for fighting against Zorga, the Alchemagic deck, you might want to invest on early guarding as it's very difficult to guard his rear guards once he starts playing orders. So guarding at grade 1 and 2 might help you. Moving on to Brand Gate. For Prison, you have advantage over their mechanic. Since your deck doesn't use Counterblast, you can just use Counterblast to call back the units that have been imprisoned. And if you have a lot of rear guards in field, Marjorie and Protobulb can help you clear your rear guards so that you won't let Seraph Snow do her triple drive. And Orphist. Facing against Orphist, it's just a simple brawl. You both really doesn't have cards to deal with each other except for their order that retires your rear guard, I guess. So that is it for our final rush build. Hopefully this helps you with building your deck and looking at specific matchups, deck techs, and the like. So we'll be doing more deck overviews, deck builds with what's in line for the deck builds will be Barrow Magnus and the 2 Stoicheia decks. So if you have comments and suggestions, you can just leave them down below as the usual YouTube things. And yeah, bye!